Just lately this week, I've been talking to different people, and it's not just this week, it's been for a while. Different people who are really grappling with a sense of how they might find a greater sense of trust in their lives, in how things unfold. And sometimes it can feel like a really tall order for ourselves. And so I thought it would be a great topic to bring forward tonight because it's kind of a unique topic in these Advaita circles. And I think it's because there's a way that often we as individuals might put things into categories, which is kind of a very dualistic way that the mind tries to find order and placement and to somehow give a narrative to our experience. And so often the overlay in this realm of the topic of trust is, is this person trustworthy or not trustworthy? Is life trustworthy or not trustworthy? Is this circumstance trustworthy or not trustworthy? And this is a way that we try to navigate. And it's it's a way that sometimes works, but it sometimes puts us up against limits or complexities that aren't so black and white. And so that's when our training in non duality can really help. That training that reminds us over and over again to kind of pan back, like if you think of a camera that's really zoomed in and fixated on these categories of trust or mistrust, then the idea is to take that camera lens and pan back and to look at these opposites, trust and mistrust, for example. It could be good or bad or right or wrong. Gosh, it could be, inside, outside, up or down, or a lot of things. But when we put our dualistic concepts out in front of us, we reside at a different vantage point. We abide as the seeing that is observing the dualism of these categories. And so our training in non-duality is to rest back into that gaze of what is seeing these feelings of trust or mistrust. What is seeing these thoughts that are dualistic? What is the felt sense of resting and abiding as the seeing, or we could say as awareness? And the resting part is really key because if we're just panning back and we're in this witness mode of like looking at everything out in front of us, we're still not quite settled in ourselves. We may not feel as at home in the moment. But when we rest not only back, but down and in, there's a way that we come upon a very curious thing, at least how I would describe it, is we come upon what I like to call a posture of trust. You could say the energetic imprint that we feel when we trust in something is an imprint in which we feel settled. Like, oh, I feel at rest in this situation. I feel at rest with this person. I feel at rest in my perceptions of life. And when we're at rest in ourselves, a curious thing happens. We're so resourced in a greater sense of ease or okayness that can even underlie difficulty when we dip down underneath it and breathe more deeply and feel our bodies from the neck down or from the waist down. We settle more energetically. And when we do that, there's a way that we become resourced in a greater sense of stability and strength. And you could even say a greater sense of empowerment. The power that comes from a sense of being connected with ourselves. And when we're connected with ourselves very deeply, there's less of a tendency to reach for things on the outside that are trustworthy. That's not to say that we won't, more align with or prefer people that just exude a inherent sense of trustworthiness, or prefer circumstances that put us at ease. Of course, that's natural to be inclined in these kinds of ways. But when we're more connected with ourselves, the outside circumstances are less, how do you say, um, less alluring as an arena where we would seek that sense of contentment or okayness. And so, meditation and inquiry that points us outside the boundaries of dualistic thought and into a deeper sense of the quietude, the peace, and the equanimity within that's underneath any surface chaos or push and pull of the day. When we orient this way, we're orienting to a depth that resources us in our true seat of power. Now, this isn't like a power over others. This is simply the power of being connected with that sense of utter okayness. In these moments, you abide in that sense of yourself that is always and ever okay, even when what's unfolding in the moment isn't okay with us in our minds or in our initial responses. And this brings about a paradox that might sound kind of funny, like, well, how can you be okay when things aren't okay? And should I even orient that way? Like, if things aren't okay, shouldn't I be fixing them instead of trying to find a place in me that's going to be okay with them and just go to sleep to the troubles in before me? And these are questions that are worth looking at. And one thing that I've noticed is that belief that we'll only respond if we keep alive that sense that it's not okay, and I'm not okay, then that we'll respond. That's a belief to really challenge and look at a lot more closely. Because there's a lot of times when you're at your best and you're acting and responding and achieving, and you're very effective, perhaps even more effective, precisely because you allow yourself to come from a place of okayness, even in very difficult circumstances. And so it's a good thought to watch. And sometimes people aren't even conscious of it, conscious of the way that they might hold on to distress because they believe if they give themselves permission to let down from it, they'll miss something or they won't address things. So it's worth certainly an experiment, at least, but also deep questioning and observing about whether or not that's true.